Is it true that an agency as big as HYBE has been covering up shocking truths involving one of the world's biggest idols? Why did Jungkook finally choose to speak up after so long of silence? What's really going on behind the scenes of K-pop? Find the answer now. Don't forget to like, comment your opinion, and subscribe to keep updating the latest news. Have we only seen the surface of the K-pop world full of light and luxury, without really knowing what is hidden inside? Is it possible that an agency as big as HYBE, which is home to big names like BTS, 17, and LE Seraphim, is keeping secrets that even its fans don't know about? And most surprisingly, why did Jungkook, the youngest member of BTS who is known for being quiet and professional, finally decide to open his voice? It all started from rumors that were initially only vaguely heard among fans. Several pieces of information began to appear in the online community, interspersed with speculation and unanswered questions. But now, the fog began to dissipate, and one by one the shocking facts began to become clear. This story is not just about an artist, but about power, control, and courage to resist the system that has been considered perfect. HYBE, the company formerly known as Big Hit Entertainment, has transformed into one of the giants of the global entertainment industry. With massive expansion, label acquisitions, and market dominance, HYBE seemed like a symbol of absolute success. But like an iceberg, only a small part of reality is visible on the surface. In recent months, there has been speculation that there is something hidden from the public. Not about love scandals or cheap gossip, but something much more serious: alleged image manipulation, psychological pressure on artists, and controversial internal policies. What makes things even hotter is the emergence of anonymous reports from former staff, coaches, even trainees who failed to debut. They gave shocking confessions about an exhausting training system, restrictions on personal life, to alleged verbal bullying. But all of that is still considered a passing wind, until a clue emerges from an unexpected source: Jungkook himself. When Jungkook did a sudden live broadcast on the Weverse platform, fans thought it was just a casual session. But from his more serious than usual expression, it seemed that he was preparing something important. Without naming names, he begins to talk about the importance of being human before becoming an entertainment product, about the fatigue he has been harboring, and how sometimes the reality behind the camera is not as sweet as it seems. In his calm but heavy tone of voice, Jungkook uttered a phrase that made the fans hold their breath. "We are often considered perfect, but you don't know how much we have to sacrifice to keep it all going." The sentence sounded like a signal. He did not blame anyone directly, but enough to make netizens start linking various rumors that have been spread. Comments flooded the broadcast. Some showed concern, some were angry, and some began to connect the dots that had been separated. There are mentions of missing training videos, sudden changes in the behavior of some members, to rumors of unbalanced contracts. Not long after, HYBE issued an official statement. But instead of answering, the statement avoids the main question. They stress that all artists under HYBE's auspices are treated with the utmost respect and in accordance with professional procedures. The public is not easily convinced, because this time, it's not just any source who speaks. This is Jungkook, BTS's golden mean, who has been known to be loyal and has almost never complained publicly. Over time, Korean media began to raise the case. Some investigative journalists leaked internal data on extreme training schedules, 24-hour surveillance of the artist's personal life, as well as medical reports of some trainees who resigned due to mental exhaustion. One of the most shocking confessions came from a vocal coach who did not want to be named. In an exclusive interview, he revealed that the training system at HYBE can make someone a star, but it can also destroy their personality. He even mentioned that some artists restricted their interaction with family to keep full concentration on career. The big question arises: is this the price of global success? Jungkook himself gave no further clarification after his first broadcast, but he began to show a change in attitude in some of his performances, more expressive, more open, and on some occasions, visibly emotional. In a recent interview with Japanese media, he said, "I hope everyone knows that being an idol doesn't mean we have to lose ourselves." Netizens began to dig back into old clips of BTS, looking for signs that all this was going on for a long time. And they found surprising things. Backstage moments when Jungkook or the other members seemed exhausted, or looked like they wanted to say something but chose to remain silent. The story is no longer just about HYBE or Jungkook. This became a symbol of greater tension between the Korean entertainment industry and its artists. The fans began to demand transparency. Hashtags like #ProtectJungkook and #HYBEExplain started trending on Twitter and international fan communities. In one international fanbase upload, it says, "We love BTS because they are people, not machines. We deserve to know if anyone hurt them." This statement resonated throughout the world, creating enormous pressure on the previously almost untouchable HYBE. How does this story end? Will HYBE admit to excessive pressure in their system? Will Jungkook be the trigger for major changes in this highly competitive industry? Or will he face the consequences for daring to speak out? Now, fans and industry watchers continue to wait for the next step. Some even refer to this as a moment of revolution in the world of K-pop. If Jungkook can make a voice, who else will follow? Will this open the door for other artists to tell their truth? And is the public ready to hear the reality behind the glitter of the stage? If we think that the South Korean entertainment industry has become a symbol of discipline and perfection, then this reality that is being revealed is a severe slap to the illusion. The facts that had been so tightly covered up began to leak to the surface, not from cheap tabloids, but from the mouths of insiders themselves, and what shook the most, from Jungkook's mouth. What makes an idol with an image as clean as Jungkook's, who has always maintained a reputation, finally let go of the filter and say things that indirectly challenge the system he came from? Is this just a momentary emotional outburst? Or has it reached a point where silence is no longer an option? And if one Jungkook already feels the need to speak up, what about other artists who don't have as much influence as him? HYBE, in all its glory, has become not only a home for superstars, but also a symbol of control. Not a few fans are now questioning whether the family-like image that has been displayed is just packaging that is formed to create blind loyalty from the public. More surprisingly, the issue is not just about work fatigue, but about psychological suppression, constraints on individual freedom, and even the alleged practices of covert exploitation that are contrary to human values. Industry critics say K-pop is one of the few entertainment industries in the world that systemically molds people into market products, with a rigorous narrative to live by. An idol is not just an artist, but a brand, property, investment. Jungkook, with all his accomplishments, is a perfect example of that product. But when the product starts talking as a human, the system falters. We can no longer turn a blind eye that many idols are experiencing unaddressed mental turmoil. Some cases of tragic deaths that were previously seen only as personal pressure are now beginning to be viewed from a different angle. Could it be that they actually tried to fight the system, but failed? Are their voices muffled by contracts and consequences? What Jungkook said, that piece of sentence, was enough to trigger a domino effect. International fans began to dig into the artist's contract under HYBE. A report from artist rights lawyers mentioned that some clauses in trainee and active idol contracts are highly biased and limit individual rights. Even in some cases, they are not allowed to speak freely in the media without an approved script. This is not just a rumor. Some of the trainees who did not make their debut have begun to dare to appear on independent platforms, voicing that they were forced to follow extreme diet programs, banned from having a social life, and even watched on camera almost all day. More egregiously, one of them mentions that HYBE has a psychological monitoring system that is used to assess the level of emotional stability and decide who is worthy of further and who is frozen secretly. Why was this never revealed to the public? Because HYBE, like many other major agencies, has complete control over the media narrative that may come out. They have exclusive contracts with major media, controlling how news is presented. Even when there are minor incidents from their artists, it is usually handled with gentle framing, narrative salvage imagery. But this time it's different. This time it came from within, from someone they couldn't shut up without creating a storm. In the midst of this commotion, it was also alleged that HYBE had been using internal social pressure to make the artists hold back. Those who were too vocal were said to be transferred to less strategic projects or arrested without explanation. There is also a more extreme issue that some artists are threatened with the disclosure of personal information if they do not comply with certain directives. How true is this? We may not know for sure yet, but clearly, enough former staffers and insiders are now starting to open up, suggesting that this is no accident, The most touching and at the same time surprising was when Jungkook said in a follow-up broadcast that, "Sometimes you feel like you have no control over your own life." The sentence is heartbreaking, not because he's an artist, but because he's human. He is someone who throughout his adult life was under the spotlight, but also under the control of whom he did not choose. HYBE is now facing a huge wave of criticism. Requests for an independent audit of the artist management system began to surface. Even some large investors are beginning to question whether the company's internal structure is still sound. The rise in stocks that had been the pride of HYBE began to show symptoms of faltering. Will the public continue to believe in the perfect narrative sold by this agency? Or will we witness the collapse of one of the most preserved images in modern K-pop history? The sad thing is, this may just be the tip of the iceberg. Many have speculated that if Jungkook can say this, then surely more stories are still hidden behind the scenes. Will the other idols speak up? Or will they remain silent, knowing how dangerous it is to fight against a system that gives them everything? One last question we should all ponder together. If this system is truly oppressive, then what have we become as spectators and fans all these years? Are we part of that pressure? Are we contributing to an industry that is shaping people into commodities? There is one question that is increasingly screaming into the public's ears. Who actually controls the idols? Themselves? Or the industrial machinery that treats them like dolls adorned with glitter? After Jungkook ignited the spark, the fire could no longer be extinguished. And for the first time, fans are starting to see the darker side of the stage, which has always featured only smiles and perfect choreography. This truth is not just about strict internal policies or brutal work schedules. It has been known for a long time, even if it is only spoken of in a whisper. Now, the spotlight is starting to turn on an even more sinister allegation that HYBE, and perhaps a few other major agencies, have formed an ecosystem that herds idols into invisible psychological isolation, where they must choose between being human or becoming legends. And the choice is always one-sided. Several former staff and insiders who spoke anonymously revealed that unconditional loyalty is a key foundation of the system. Even in training from adolescents, trainees are taught one main thing: do not question, don't fight, don't feel, just follow. Even when the body is no longer able to stand, or when the heart begins to crack under pressure, there is no room for rest. Because if one person starts to weaken, then they are considered not strong enough for the unforgiving world of K-pop. And this is not just hard doctrine. It's a form of control. Many fans were surprised to find that even the selection of hair color, dress style, to the way certain idols laugh has gone through the layered approval of the internal PR team. The artist is only allowed to be the version of himself that the brand narrative approves of. Worse, one of the whistleblowers mentioned that there were cases where idols were forbidden to show signs of sadness or depression in live broadcasts, even though they were at the lowest point of their lives. What about personal relationships? Don't dream. In the leaked contracts circulating in limited circles, there is a clause that romantic relationships, even personal communication with outsiders, can be considered a violation of ethics if they are not reported. Some artists even said they had to cut ties with their families to maintain a neutral image that could be marketed to all circles. If this is true, then the question is simple but brutal. What price do idols pay to still look happy? Back to Jungkook. He's not just a global superstar, he's a symbol of fan trust. When he speaks, he's not just saying what's in his heart. He indirectly dismantled the system that had formed it. It does not attack directly, but his gestures, his choice of words, and his wounded expression were enough to make anyone realize that something was terribly wrong. And now the public began to wonder, was HYBE trying to silence him? After the viral broadcast, fans noticed that Jungkook disappeared from the radar for a few days. Social media activity was suddenly quiet. Even the previously announced schedule of activities began to be pulled back. Speculation arose quickly. Was he being punished internally? Is it being quarantined PR to dampen the impact? One source from the industry said that large agency companies have a method of impact screening, in which artists who are too vocal will be reduced exposure slowly, without being conspicuous. They will be transferred to non-major projects, reduced to appearing at public events, or rested for health reasons, when in fact it is to restore the company's image. If this is what is happening to Jungkook, then the next question: how long can he survive without losing his voice completely? Not a few believe that what is happening now is not just a rebellion of one person, but the beginning of a major shift. Jungkook could be a pioneer, but the price he has to pay may be more expensive than imagined, especially if HYBE decides to fight back secretly. In an industry whose reputation is built on image, the biggest threat is idols who no longer want to play a role. Netizens in various international forums even called this the first publicly recorded uprising. Some compared it to the movement of Hollywood artists in the past who rejected the exploitation of the big studios. But the difference is, this is not Hollywood. This is K-pop, where loyalty is considered the highest currency. To resist is to be ready to be excluded. If the rumors are true, that some contracts allow agencies to stop artists' careers without compensation if they cause harm to the brand, then Jungkook is on a dangerous path. Even with a name as big as him, the system can create a version of a counter-narrative that drops its credibility. There are already signs. Some anonymous accounts began to spread the word about Jungkook's attitude change, calling him increasingly unruly, some even vaguely calling it a personal emotional crisis. Is this a strategy to weaken public sympathy for him? There is no evidence, but this pattern is all too familiar. The artist's characterization as unstable has always been the first weapon to reduce mass support. But Jungkook is not just any artist. He is the heart of BTS, and BTS is not just a group, but a global phenomenon. If HYBE thinks it can put out this fire, they may forget that the current generation of fans is much smarter and faster to respond. They can no longer be lied to with one-page statements full of euphemisms. They want answers. They want the truth. And most disturbing of all, if this happens to Jungkook, their biggest artist, then what about other idols who don't have as much voice power as him? Those who are younger, more dependent on the system, which is easier to control. Could it be that they now see Jungkook as the only hope that change is possible? One viral comment from a fan described all of this very aptly. If idols of Jungkook's level can feel constrained, then K-pop is not an industry, it's a floodlit prison. We're at a tipping point. One more step, one more voice from within, could be an earthquake that breaks down the illusory wall that has fenced off this industry. Jungkook has opened a loophole, and now the public must decide. Will we just watch and wait? Or do we join in demanding that the truth be fully exposed?